We're live. Hi, guys.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's live session. I am Misty, the event coordinator for Made to Homeschool, an online homeschool community designed to support homeschoolers at all stages of their homeschool journey. And I'm so excited to have you guys all here with me. Whether you're joining live or catching the replay, you're in the right place. So today we're diving into chatting about homeschooling and online homeschool conventions, particularly our upcoming event, Refresh, which is happening on February 8th. Homeschooling is such a rewarding journey, but let's be real. By this time of the year, we can feel a little drained or unsure of how to keep the momentum going. So, our goal with Refresh is to encourage homeschool moms to finish the year strong while they confidently begin planning for the next school year. So, that's what we're going to talk about today. But before we get started, I want you guys to let us know in the comments one, where you're tuning in from, and two, what you're most excited about or hoping to learn today. And leave those questions there because we're going to circle back around at the end and answer your guys' questions. So let's get started. So joining me today is Katie, my friend from Made to Homeschool. Katie, can you introduce yourself to our audience today and let them know a little bit about you and how you serve the homeschool community?
Yeah, absolutely. So, my name is Katie, and I have been homeschooling for over a decade as a homeschooling mom, but for many decades as a homeschooling student. I'm a second generation homeschooler. I am the oldest of 7 kids, and I have 6 kids. And it's been amazing getting to homeschool and to get to share that with other people. About 6 years ago, 7 years ago, something like that, I started a YouTube channel called Life the Mundane, where I help homeschooling parents, help connect them to resources and tools that will help them in their homeschooling. And I have a special place in my heart for special needs homeschooling because out of my 6 kids, I only have one neurotypical homeschooler. So we have a lot of diversity in learning styles and methods in our home. And so it just allows me to be able to share that with other people online.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have 3 kids and I've graduated my oldest, and my middle is graduating this year. And it's crazy. Like, I've been homeschooling now for, I don't know, like 13 years. And my youngest is my learning struggles child. But each of our kids are just so different. So I love how you brought that up and bring that experience to the table. So, as a homeschool parent, if you could go back and start over again, what would you do differently?
I think it comes back to having kids who are struggling learners.
Mhm.
One thing I wish I would have done differently is I felt like I don't know, maybe it was the sense of being a second generation homeschooler. I felt like I needed to prove myself and be like, I got this. And there wasn't as much of a sense of being like, it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to get outside services. It's okay to not have all the answers. And I think something I grappled with a lot, and I have honestly continually grappled with, is that I am the manager of my child's education. I am not the person that is responsible to do all of their education. I'm just in charge of making sure I find the best people, places, resources, tools to educate them. But it doesn't always have to be me, because I ran into that with my oldest, severe dyslexia. He's on the autism spectrum, all the different things. And I was just like, no, I'm supposed to be the educator. I need to teach him all the things. And I was like, no, it's my job to find the right people. And sometimes I'm not the right person to do a particular subject or an area. And so I think that's something God has taught me a lot, is a lot of humbleness in that time. And I wish I would have been maybe a little bit more humble and open to outside help.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that that comes back to control. And I think that I know, at least for me, like when I started homeschooling, I had this picture in my mind of what I thought homeschooling was supposed to look like, what I thought it should look like. And if I was letting outside resources or outside people help me, then one, I wasn't doing the job that God gave me in homeschooling my kids. And two, I wasn't doing a good enough job. I was letting go of that control that I wanted to keep. But in reality, I was really broadening my circle and doing what was best meant for my kids, and
Mhm.
enhancing their education by letting the resources and the people that God put in our lives to best help and serve them. And I think my youngest with his dyslexia really, really opened my eyes to that. And my son has such a different education than my girls did because I did learn so much as I went through the homeschool years. So it's really crazy.
And as with everything and like parenting in general, you start out thinking all of these things are really important. And then you start to realize, no, actually, this was the important thing. And so I think there's a
Absolutely.
lot of that after years of homeschooling that comes with it, where you're just like, whether or not we stick exactly to the schedule, probably not as important as the fact that we have some kind of routine and rhythm and flow. And, the fact that we do this particular curriculum and we do it with all of our kids all the way through. I have 6 kids. I have only two. I have 2 curriculums out of all 6 kids in different ranges that they actually all do. Other than that, they do their own curriculum, they do different things because we found what works for them and their brain and the way they work.
Yeah, absolutely. Nothing that worked with my girls ended up working with my son.
Yeah.
We've had to change so many things through the years. And I think that's one thing that I've loved about homeschooling is you're so much able to individualize the
Yes.
education for each of your kids. And it's such a gift. Such a gift. I love it. So, okay, Katie, the next question that I have for you is you attended and were a part of Brave with Made Homeschool in August, and online conferences are so different from in person ones. So, what stood out to you about it, and what made you want to be a part of it again?
Okay, so I was thinking about this, and being a second generation homeschooler, I grew up going to homeschool conventions.
Hmm.
That was like a part of the culture. There was no online conventions when I was a kid, but I enjoyed getting to go. I enjoyed getting to have that connection, getting to hear from the different sessions, even as a kid, and getting to browse around different curriculums and resources. And I've been to several online conferences, and there have been some neat ones out there that have some great information, but one thing I have found is that it lacks that community feel. And that is something that I thought was so cool and brave, because
Hmm.
when we do these online conferences, it's not just going in and clicking on random library of videos like on YouTube. And it's not a sense of even it being played live like this. There's interaction like this is, like being able to talk in between sessions, being able to get people's questions and answer them. And I learned just as much from the people in the comments and the chats as I did from the actual sessions. And so I think that's one of the cool things about this conference is it really brings that community connection aspect to it that I was missing from those in-person conferences, but at a fraction of the cost. Because while I love in-person conferences, I'm not able to go to as many anymore, because it's just so much when it comes to traveling and all of those things.
Yeah, absolutely. So I went to my first. So when as a homeschool parent, when was the first time you went to your first in person conference?
I went to my first in-person conference when I was pregnant with my oldest child, and I was talking to different vendors, and they were like, "How old is your homeschool student?" And I'm like, "Well, we're due in July." And they were like, I was like, I'm one of those people, like, I just need all the information and I want to take it all in. And then I've got a couple years to sort it out before I need to use it.
That is so funny. So I didn't go to my first homeschool conference until I was 5 years into it. And I was actually ready to throw in the towel on homeschooling. And I was like, I was even blogging and podcasting at the time, but I was so burnt out.
Hmm.
And it was like 2.5 hours to the nearest homeschool conference. So I had never got to go. My kids were young. My husband's work hours just always kept me from being able to do conferences. And this was pre-COVID, so nothing was online,
Yeah.
yet at the time. And so I went to my very first conference, and it was the Great Homeschool Conventions in Cincinnati. And I heard Sarah McKenzie speak, and she literally like changed my whole homeschool. It was like such an encouragement, and just I remember leaving that conference so refreshed, and
Hmm.
and that, no pun intended, with our conference coming up, but I just left so encouraged, like, okay, I
Hmm.
can do this. I can go ahead, like I can change things up. It just was such an encouragement to me, and I remember that. Like, I remember leaving in tears, and I
Yeah.
went to do marketing, like, for a sponsor for blogging or something like that. I didn't even really go thinking I was gonna get anything out of it, but I came home like a completely different mom. God used that conference and just hearing a speaker just made such a huge, huge difference in my life. And I just think conferences are so important. And we're very lucky that where we're at now, that we're able to offer online conferences like
Yeah.
Refresh for people who are unable to get out and go to conventions, especially this time of year, whenever everybody is in
Yes.
the winter blues, and we're ready to we're more excited about, finishing or planning for next year than finishing this year,
Yes. We all
and they
get
can just
that. We
make
all get
such a
that
huge
bug.
difference. Yeah, absolutely. So that's a little bit of my, experience with conferences. So,
I remember my first, it wasn't my first conference, obviously, but my first conference when my kids were actually like old enough to really be homeschooling. And I had a 5-year old, a 4-year old, a 3-year old, and a 2-year old. And I was overwhelmed. This is like not even the right descriptive term to describe the way I was feeling. And I'm like, I need to educate my kid, but then we also had special needs going on. And it was just a lot of different things. And I remember going into a session, and it was a mom who was just talking from her personal experience and sharing so many practical things. And
mhm.
she shared the why behind the things, but also what do we actually do. And I think that that's something that homeschool conferences have always offered to me that have been really encouraging, is that you actually get into the nitty gritty of how does this actually apply. We can actually go into both the why and the what, whereas most places I feel like you can only get one or the other, just time constraint wise, or you don't get that in depth, not to mention being able to actually ask questions and get that feedback with your personal situation.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree 100%. So the next question that I have is, you are presenting a workshop at Refresh, and I've actually got to hear parts of it, and I'm super excited about it. You did a great job. And can you tell everybody a little bit about what you are speaking about?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's all about when you find yourself in a homeschool rut and how to get yourself out and actually reinfuse joy back into your homeschool. And one thing I said in that conference, that or in that session, that I think is something we have to recognize is you can't always avoid the rut. You can't always avoid the burnout. There are things we can do, but it's not always avoidable. It's going to happen. And so having a really clear idea of practical ideas, fun things that you can do in those moments to bring some joy back into your homeschool without having to totally change up your curriculum or do something very expensive or over the top, is really, really helpful. So I just wanted to bring that kind of practical feel of what ministered to me in that conference I was talking about. I wanted to be able to bring that to everybody and share those practical ideas of what you can do and those small changes you can make in your homeschool to bring that joy back in, regardless of what situation you guys are going through right now.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, and I know you're speaking from personal
Yes.
experience. Can you give everybody like a small, snippet of maybe an example of a rut that you've been through and how you were able to get through it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've been through many, many ruts, as I'm
Hmm.
sure you have too, after doing this for so many years. And there's been little ones where it just feels like we're kind of in a funk. If a winter has been particularly hard and the kids are kind of
Hmm.
going stir crazy and we've physically been stuck inside the house, that can make things challenging. Last year was probably the hardest rut for us, at least in a while. And we lost my grandmother in January of last year. And then my daughter, who has a lot of medical special needs, we ended up having a cancer scare in February that actually lasted for the rest of the school year. It went all the way through into the summer. And thank heavens it didn't turn out to be cancer, but there's still a lot of unanswered medical issues we're still dealing with today. And that was just really hard because it was so many big life moments that were bearing down on us that it just made school feel like unimportant. And like, how can we have joy in this? Like, this is just something I'm getting through to get done. I don't want to think about it. I want to be able to focus on other things. And so I think God really taught me in that moment that this is still a gift and that none of these circumstances is taking God by surprise. And this isn't a mistake, that we're homeschooling in the midst of these things. And so being able to find those joy in those little moments was really, really, really important last year.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. That had to have been a hard time, and I think that those hard moments like that, we've been through those as well. And I think that looking back on those, especially as my girls have gotten older, I feel like we've been able to model life, living through those moments in life with our kids because, hopefully they don't experience something, like that with their kids, but they may, and they're going to experience other similar hardships. And we were able to live life with them and in the day to day. And I think that homeschooling allows us that freedom,
Mhm.
and allows us that privilege. And I don't know. And looking back on those times, it's difficult, but I think you can see the joy in it. Absolutely. After it's done, it might not be easy in the
Yeah.
moment, but you're definitely able to do that in the after all.
Yeah, absolutely. And if nothing else, even if your kids never do go anything like that, they are going to walk
Hmm.
alongside people who are going
Exactly.
through hard things. And so I think just encouraging your kids of like, hey, this is God's having you go through this for a reason
Hmm.
so that you can be a blessing to others and so you can go closer to him.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I am not seeing any questions here. Do you see any?
I have not, but a couple of the frequently asked questions I know I've
Hmm.
had people message me and ask me is, this is a live online conference. Do you go back and watch replays or
Hmm.
those kinds of things? And I think this is a really not tricky answer. It's very clear cut, but it's a fun answer, okay? Because with Refresh, it is a live online conference on February 8th. It's going to be running from first thing in the morning to night. I'm not going to quote times because I'm in a different time zone than the conference, and I don't want to give you guys the wrong times. Maybe Brandon can put it in the comments for us, the exact times. But it's going to go from morning to evening. You can pop in and out. You can join live all day long. We do have 2 longer breaks in the day, one around lunchtime, one around dinner time, so that you could actually step away and not have that FOMO. You're not going to be missing out on anything. But the sessions are played live. Our keynote speakers are having live Q&As, correct, Misty?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
So they're both going to be speaking and then have live Q&As where they can answer your questions directly. And then there's these in-between sessions, sort of like what we're doing here, where you get to learn, like I said, just as much as you get to learn in the actual sessions. Then you can catch the replays. So if you can't make it to everything live, or if you're busy that day, you can catch the replays till February 10th. But I will tell you, these kind of in between sessions you miss out on. And so I love actually getting to be there live. I think that's the most fun part for sure. But I think that it's something that is really exciting to be able to be there live when you can. And then there's on demand sessions too. There are actually 6 on demand
We have
sessions
a
as
lot.
well. So it's
Hmm.
a total of 12 sessions and 2 panels. Is that
That sounds
right?
right, and I've got to listen to all of the on-demand sessions, and they are great. We have a great variety, of on-demand sessions, and excuse me, definitely you guys don't wanna miss it those. I was actually trying to find a question because we had sent out questions to attendees, and there were a couple that didn't fit the panel, and the one
Oh
that I
yeah.
was looking for, um, I can't find the exact question, but I do remember, um, I think I remember what it was, and she had asked if whenever how do you fill in gaps in education? So, like, for example, let's say you are finishing up, and I don't remember the exact wording, but I do know the gist of it. So let's say you're finishing up middle school and you realize at the end of middle school or elementary school that you have never taught the Revolutionary War. How do you go about filling in those gaps of education that you might end up facing in your homeschool?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the first step is to recognize there will be gaps and just to get over that to some extent. As homeschool moms, we put a lot of pressure on ourselves that our kids, like, we have to teach everything and that they
Mhm.
must remember everything. And I don't know about you, but I was homeschooled for most of my life, but I did go to private school for a couple of years. I don't remember everything that was taught in either place. Most of us do not. And so there's always going to be gaps in education. So I think we need to first stop fearing the gaps.
Mhm.
The second thing we need to do is we really need to focus on, what is really important here, right? So if it's the Revolutionary War and that's something that is really exciting and interesting to them, let's dive into it in our free time. Like we could go through a curriculum on it, but we could also just dive into that learning on our own or utilizing summers to be able to fill in gaps. I had an older, wiser homeschool mom that told me that one time. She was like, yeah, we homeschool year round, but during the summer, we use that to focus on any gaps or fun things that we wanted to get to. So she's like, my kids, I realized their handwriting, like older kids, their handwriting had gotten really sloppy. And so we just took a summer and we focused on handwriting. So you can write about the Revolutionary War. You know what I mean? Like you can incorporate those things into that. But I think really ultimately understanding that our goal is to teach our kids to love learning and to learn how to actually be able to find the information that they need. I think that is really important because if they do have gaps down the road and they need that information, they'll know how and where to go get it. But yeah, it doesn't have to be a scary thing, but there will be gaps. So just the earlier we learn that, the better.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you guys have questions, by all means, please leave them in the comments. Even if you guys might not see other questions pop up, we are live on a bunch of different platforms.
Yes.
And we are able to see all of those questions come up where we're at, no matter where you're at, where you're watching at. So please absolutely let us know what questions you guys might have. I have a few others
Yeah. And
over
these can be
here that
questions
I'm
about
going.
homeschooling or
Mhm.
refresh, either way.
Yep, absolutely. Questions about anything at all. So, another question that we had come in is, how do you manage and organize your homeschooling materials and space?
Ooh, okay. So I think the first thing is recognizing the space that you have and not the space you want. We all do it. Like get off Pinterest, get off Instagram, and look at the space you actually have. We have had seasons where we've had a whole homeschool room. We have had spaces where we have had a closet and that's all we have. We've had spaces where I have made a space that was not like our dining room, things like that. I think it's important to first see what do you have space wise. Then make sure that the materials, the curriculum, the resources, the art supplies, all those things are actually things you're using because speaking from personal experience, we can tend to be a little bit of a hoarder sometimes when it comes to curriculum. Even our friend Wendy at Plan Prep Pray and who is in Made to Homeschool, she calls herself an essentialist, a minimalist. She's very minimal in everything in her home except homeschool curriculum. She will tell you that. And we're just a lot of us are like that. We tend to keep a lot of things. So obviously only finding space for what you actually need is going to be a big key thing. And then I think just thinking through where do you use the different things. So
Mhm.
especially if you're in a small space, I know we love the idea of homeschool rooms. If you talk to most, not all, but most moms who have homeschool rooms, they'll tell you that's their place. They store their homeschool stuff, but they usually don't exclusively do school. Oh, there's Wendy. She says, yes, it's true. We don't usually exclusively do school in our school rooms. We tend to kind of carry it around the house. So think about where are you actually schooling and what are you doing there? So in our living room, we have a rolling cart that has our morning menu stuff that we do our morning basket time, and it has our hymnals, and it has a few things like that. But in a different room, we have our workbooks and writing utensils because that's where we use those. So you can just kind of get creative with your space, but it's really, really important to think through being content. Because if we come at it with an attitude of ungratefulness, you're never going to find something that works for you because you're going to be constantly comparing. That's a super
Yeah.
long answer. Sorry.
No, no, I'm going to add to that, and then I'm going to get this question that Brandon's highlighted for us. But I had a schoolroom, and when we started homeschooling, I was so excited. I really coveted a schoolroom so much, so much. And so we ended up adding onto our house because we have a very small house. And I had a schoolroom, and I was so excited about it. And we used it so much when the girls were little. But then when Daniel became old enough for school age, it was too much for him because he
Mhm.
has ADHD and some other learning struggles, and it was too bright, too much distractions. And so we ended up like not using it. He never did school in the schoolroom. All of our stuff is on the table, and now actually that schoolroom is another bedroom for the kid that came home from college. So it just we never ended up using it, and I was so excited about it. So, I just wanted to add to that. So we have a small space, and we organize a lot with bookshelves, baskets. We had little lockers from an old school that somebody gave us, We used those for a
Oh,
while.
that would be fun.
It was fun. The kids really liked that. So,
Anytime you can bring a little bit of traditional school into
yep.
the homeschool, they're like, "Ooh!" Like anytime my kids get to ride a bus when we go to like events and they have buses that take you through the park, they're like, "Ooh, we're riding a bus. We're gonna use a
Yes.
locker. We get to use that." I love it.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so the question that we have highlighted here, and guys, keep the questions coming. So, do you have a favorite session that you've previewed? So, this actually might surprise Katie, and it might surprise some of you. So, the sessions, and I've got to watch a lot of them. Probably, I'm going to pick two, if that's okay. So, one would be Regina's from Classic Learning Test, and that's only and she's speaking on standardized testing. And that is because when we first started homeschooling, testing was one of those things that my husband made a requirement for us being able to homeschool. It's a long story. I'm not going to get into the do's or don'ts about testing, but I think that there's so much stigma when it
Mhm.
comes to testing and so much debunking. And when she was speaking, and she's a homeschool graduate herself, which I find very interesting. But when she was speaking, I just found myself being like, yes, yes, that's everything. That's all of my same viewpoints that I have about testing. And I think that there's so much stigma around testing when it comes to the homeschool community that she just presented it in such a well thought out way that it I don't know. I was very, very impressed with that session. So that would probably be one. And then the second one would be I really liked Christina's from Rooted Home.
Yep.
Yep. I really liked hers because we're starting to make small changes in our home, just healthier changes. And I really liked how she took those healthy choices and also turned it. We just talked about just overall health in our homes, like our, spiritual mindset, physical, mental, all of it. Her session was also really good. So they're all amazing, but those would probably be the top two that stood out to me as somebody who's almost done homeschooling. So,
Yeah, I have not gotten to preview any of the sessions yet. I am really excited about Morgan session. She is talking about the imperfect schedule for the imperfect family. And I cannot tell you how much that title in and of itself and the description resonates with me. You actually, Brandon, I'm sure there's a link already, but down in the description, you should see a link to the refreshyourhomeschool.com website. And on there, you can actually see all of the session titles and the descriptions and all of the things. So if you kind of want to get a preview, that is kind of a great way to see a preview of what kind of sessions are there and see
mhm,
more about Christina's session and all the ones we've mentioned. Wendy also is doing one on your getting systems and routines in
mhm,
there that'll help refresh your homeschool. So I love the fact that this is all about helping you kind of freshen up what you're doing and feel reinvigorated in what you're doing, but coming at it from a lot of different angles. Oh,
exactly.
that's actually not true. I have gotten to preview one of the sessions because I actually got to interview Christine Keys.
Mm,
And totally forgot about that. I got to interview Christine Keys, and that is one of the sessions that is a on-demand session, and it was phenomenal. And it was all about setting boundaries to help you from getting into burnout, kind of avoiding that in the future. And it was really well done.
okay, so and that's the one that I've not got to watch. So,
You'll enjoy it.
okay, so the next question is I want to make kindergarten special for my middle, but I feel like a bulk of my time is devoted to my fifth grader. Any tips for balancing? So that's about the age range I had with my kids. But do you want to start with that, Katie?
Yeah. So I think the big thing here is that I really feel like we have to recognize again, God didn't make a mistake when he put the family dynamic that he gave you. So we can feel like sometimes when we have like a wide age range that they're not getting what our older kids got, but you know what? Our younger kids are also getting things our older kids never got. Like it's different seasons, different times. Frankly, we're different parents if we're being honest,
Hmm.
and that's a good thing. There's growth there. And so I think one, just recognizing the importance of that and that we just need to embrace the season God's put us in and not mourn what we think we're losing. But I do think that when it comes to this kind of thing, setting aside some special time, kindergarten education curriculum doesn't take very long. Like you're talking, depending on the child and the curriculum, 1 hour, maybe 2, depending on what all you're including in that flow there. So it can be very easy to do that first thing in the morning and then give your 5th grader your attention, or maybe carve it out in the afternoon. We've actually found a lot of success. My kindergartners seem to not be, it depends on the kid. Okay. I'll say this. My boys are different. Boys and girls are very different, but my kindergartners seem to not be as affected about whether or not we do school first thing in the morning or in the afternoon. Whereas like my middle schoolers and my high schoolers, like they have a time of day that they function well and a time of day they do not function well. So it just depends on the child. But if your kindergartner can function early in the morning or right after lunch, pick one of those times to kind of set aside some special time to work with them. But yeah, I don't know. What do you think, Misty?
Yeah, so I totally agree with that, and I will also add to that right now all you're seeing is a kindergartner and a 5th grader, but fast forward that, in a few years, and that kindergartner is gonna be the only one that you might
Yes,
have left at home,
they're going to have all
and
your attention.
and they're gonna have all of your attention, and those middle school ages is gonna be the time when they're gonna really honestly need you the most, and so they'll get their time, and I know that might seem like a really far time away. Excuse me, sorry. But it does happen very much so.
Mhm.
And it happens faster than you think. So it's a
Yes.
little bittersweet. Um, but whenever my youngest was in kindergarten, I did very similar to what Katie said. I set aside, an hour and a half with just him. And I had my older kids work independently to themselves. I also still try to do all of those fun things. So, like,
Mhm.
even whenever my girls were seniors, even now, my oldest is a senior and my middle is a senior and my youngest is in 7th grade. We still try to do morning time together, and so we still kind of kept those little things that the girls found a lot of fun in elementary school. I just reminded them, hey, you guys had each other, you guys
Mhm.
still did these things that were a lot of fun. Let's still make these things fun for your brother. So we still went to the museum on the 100th day of school, whenever they were in 7th, ninth, and 2nd grade. The girls could have cared less in 7th and
Yes.
ninth grade, but it mattered to him, and they remembered being able to do that on their 100th day of school. So we kept those little things that were special to them, and we kept those alive for him as he,
Mhm.
went through those elementary years, even though they might have seemed a little bit silly to drag the older ones along and to keep them. We still kept those little moments
And I
moments
think
special.
to tag on to that, because we had 4 kids really close together. Then we have like this big gap, and then we have my 2 youngest ones. And I think something that helps too is when you involve the older ones in making things special for the younger ones. So when you ask the older ones, what was something we did in your kindergarten year or when you were little that you loved? Like, because I would love to do that for your sibling. Could you help
Mhm.
me with that? Whether it's mummifying a chicken in history or whether it was going on a field trip. And sometimes when they get involved and they realize like this is something special I experienced and I want to share that with you. What's that favorite? The one that gets me is read alouds. Like I
Mhm.
hit a read aloud that I loved. And then I'm like, oh my goodness, my little kids don't remember that. They were
Mhm.
babies. Like I have to go back. So we did Paddington again last year. And I have high schoolers. Were they like super into it? No, but they were at the same time. They were like, really, Paddington? But then they were like, oh, I remember that story. And they're laughing in the
Mhm.
back. And, they're acting too cool for school, but they 100% loved it. So involve them in that process, and that
Exactly.
helps too.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. So, okay, do we have any other questions through here? Okay.
Yes,
Says,
I feel that one. The whole kindergarten. Yes, I felt like that many times. Like this is my chance to like do it right, and just embrace the season. Don't worry about do
yeah,
overs.
absolutely. Okay. How do
I
you
love
how
it.
do you persevere? Okay, so Amy asks, how do you persevere on a hard day? What's your best tip for turning it around? And what do you think, Brandon? 2 more questions? We'll see what
Yeah.
he thinks about that.
How do you
So,
persevere on a hard day? So yesterday was a hard day for me, like a really hard day for me. And ultimately, I'll be honest, I did persevere and I didn't persevere. Okay. I actually decided to call school off yesterday. I know the horrors. But let me explain because I think this is helpful for people. Okay. When it comes to hard days, that I don't actually take off days very often anymore. I used to take them off frequently, and I got to the point where I actually stopped allowing myself to do that because it had become a crutch. Anything, there are a million things that are going to come up in the day that are going to make it feel like it's just better to stop. But I finally have gotten to a season where I feel like I can do that. But I called my husband and I said, I don't want to make permanent feelings. I don't want to make permanent decisions based on temporary feelings. I need you to talk this through with me. I need to tell you what's going on today. I want to stop. I don't want to, I think we need to pause, but I need to tell you why. And I need you to be honest with me about whether or not I'm making excuses or whether or not it would be better for the relationship in our home
Mm-hmm.
for me to pause. So he sat there and he listened to me at work while he's doing a million other things, go through all of the different things that I was thinking. And he was like, you know what? I think you're right. I think you do need to pause. And he's like, but if we're going to pause, we're going to pause with purpose. And I think this is really important. I know this is kind of going off a tangent. Sorry, guys. It's just fresh in my mind. Pausing with a purpose. And he's like, yes, we're going to pause, but I'm going to do the things that help to reset and refresh me. So I stopped right there. And even though this was like 11 a.m. in the middle of the day, I stopped and I went ahead and I did a workout and not intense, like a 5-minute workout, guys, to lower the expectations. Okay. 5-minute workout, took a shower, ate some lunch, did my devotions, and then was like, okay, now we're going to refresh. We're going to start the day with a new heart, new spirit, new attitude. And we're just going to say school's not on the table right this second. And so all that to say, whether you actually persevere through the schoolwork or you persevere through the day, just having that mindset of we're going to pause with a purpose or we're going to persevere with a purpose, but the purpose has to be to remain in connection and relationship with your family and not to just like plow over to get the to-do list done.
Yeah, and I think that's I think the most important thing, like looking back as somebody with older kids, is the relationships are so important. And Amy commented pause with purpose. I love that. And I think that focusing on the relationship, if I could go back to when my kids were younger and think about that, like from the beginning, what kind of relationship am I building in my relationship with my kids and my relationship that the kids have with each other?
Mm-hmm.
I think homeschooling in general is so much about relationships. And on those bad days, we can choose to like push through with school with the grumpy attitudes and everybody in bad moods. But what is it going to do to the relationships within the home?
Mm-hmm.
you know and that's not always the wisest choice. It's just not. So I used to have a blog, and I wrote about this at that time. But I had always told my kids, to choose joy in like the hard moments. And I was particularly frustrated at one point with my son because he had a lot of learning struggles, and this was before we ever got his diagnosis. And I would get so frustrated because he didn't learn like the girls did. School wasn't as easy for him, and I didn't understand why it wasn't as easy for him. And so Kristen was maybe, I don't know, honestly, she was maybe 8, 9 years old. And I remember I was getting really frustrated with him, and she wrote on this dry erase board, choose joy, and showed it to me discreetly as I was
Oh,
getting frustrated. And I tell you about a humbling moment. One, that my child had to remind me to do that.
yeah.
And two, that I had taught her that, but I wasn't modeling it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's important,
Yeah,
to
absolutely.
just choose joy in those moments and remember why we're homeschooling. I love what you said too about pause with purpose. I don't know if any of that made sense. That was kind of a little
No,
bit of
it
a
does. It
tangent.
makes a lot of sense. And I think it is. It all comes back to like a mindset
Mhm.
attitude with
Relationship.
it all. So
Yeah.
what tips do you have for homeschooling on a budget? There's a lot of tips, but I would say connect with community and
Mm.
utilize the resource of your community, whether that's in person, whether that's online. I think that that's a huge, huge thing that a lot of people, they think they have to buy new or they have to have all the curriculum. One thing that is really helpful when you don't know what curriculum to get is to ask to borrow something from a
Mhm.
friend and try it. And maybe you are going to buy it. Maybe you're going to borrow theirs. I don't know. It doesn't really matter that aspect of it. You definitely can utilize the library. utilize free resources. But I think your community is your greatest asset. And I think it's something you can definitely do on a budget for sure.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with that. Also check in your neighborhood, going along with community, and
Yeah.
see if there are any free resource bookshops or bookstores or anything like
Mhm.
that. It's kind of random, but like we have a local mom and pop store. They run a computer company. They also homeschool, and so they have a free curriculum corner in their store because they homeschool, and
That's
so
awesome.
moms and dads who are done with their curriculum can take it in, drop it off, and they just have like a little, like a donation jar to where if you want to donate just for them upkeeping the little curriculum corner, you can, but parents can come in and stop and grab some curriculum, borrow it just to kind of look at it, try it out, see if they're even interested in homeschooling, especially for those just getting started. And I've always loved that they do that. Um, Also shop sales. A lot of times,
Mhm.
like during convention season, and I know, like even with Refresh, a lot of our sponsors and exhibitors might be offering coupon codes
Yes.
for their curriculum this time of year. Because it's their Christmas Black Friday season. It's the time where everybody's buying, and I think that watching for those sales during curriculum season is also a really, really good way to save money.
And jumping on the email list for the people
Mm,
who you want to buy from, jumping on their email list and checking because that's where you're going to get those sales notifications and not miss them. Because I know I have done that before where I was like, oh, I was waiting for such and such curriculum company to run their yearly sale, and then I found out the week after. But if you're on their email list, you're able to see that, which is really, really helpful.
yeah, absolutely.
So Amy asked a
A
question about panels real fast. Did you see that?
I did not see that, but I was going to say I did see Amy said something about keeping her early readers picture books
Yes.
for friends and grandkids. I have a big tote in my building of all of the things I'm saving for grandkids.
I love that. I love that.
So let me find the panel question.
Yes. So she had asked about panels at Refresh. So we have two panels that are
Okay.
happening at Refresh. One that is about finishing the year strong and focusing on the season we're in.
Hmm.
And then one that is addressing those who are planning next year. How can you look forward with purpose? How can you do things in a way that's not going to detract from what's going on this homeschool year? I think there are 9 panelists altogether between the two
Hmm.
panels, and they will be live and there will be Q&A. She had asked if that was something that people can submit questions to ahead of time, or if that's something to submit the day of, or how does that work?
Yeah. So if you already have your refresh ticket, then you've already been emailed a form where you can submit your questions. So check your email, see if you've got an old email. There, you should have a form there where you can go in and submit your questions. If you have not purchased your ticket yet, then go ahead, purchase your ticket, and you'll be receiving an email. And we should be able to get your questions in for that if you'd like to submit them ahead of time. We will also have time during the panels for live questions as well, because I'm sure that that will come up as we're
Yes,
talking amongst the
absolutely.
panelists. Yeah.
Absolutely. But I'm looking forward to it. Last Brave, we had some really phenomenal
Hmm.
panels. And again, I think it's where the rubber meets the road. It's like we can
Yes.
talk about ideas all day long, but being able to address your specific questions is where there's a lot to gain. And you learn so much hearing the
Hmm.
people ask questions that you're like, oh my goodness, I thought I was the only one that was
Yeah.
wondering that.
And another thing that I like, because I was on a panel last year,
Yeah.
another thing I liked about it is even if the panelists didn't get to the questions, the sense of community just in the comments with the moms talking back and forth amongst each other, they were answering each other's questions. So if the
Yes.
panelists didn't get to your questions still seemed to get answered
Yes.
because everybody was talking amongst each other and helping each other out, which I found absolutely phenomenal and amazing. You don't get that I've not ever seen that at any other online homeschool conference personally, and I've
Yeah.
attended a bunch as, speakers, exhibitors, whatever, in this line of work, that's
Yeah.
what you do. And I had never seen another online homeschool conference do it like Brave did. So I'm excited to be a part of it again this year. So
Yes.
okay, I think that we're done. We hope everybody has really enjoyed themselves, and thank you guys so much for chatting with us today. Katie, where can people connect with you if they want to after this live?
Yes. So here on YouTube, you can go, or Instagram, or wherever you're watching from, Facebook, you can find me at Life in the Mundane, is my channel. But I also help to run the community Made to Homeschool. And that is putting on these conferences, and I'm there all the time. You can connect with me there pretty much 24/7. I take Sundays off, but other than that, you can connect with me there. And I would love to chat or talk more. And then, of course, at Refresh, we would love to see you at Refresh. February 8th. If you haven't got your tickets, go ahead and get them. And if you have gotten your tickets, text another mom that you think it would be
Hmm.
blessed by it. I think this is a huge, huge thing that is really refreshing. I've talked to a few friends. I always think of the first time homeschool moms, which is this
Yes.
is perfect for. But I remember too that as you've been doing it for a lot of years, you do get
Hmm.
tired and you do get really burnt out. And so this can be a huge encouragement to those of us who have been doing it for a long time as well. And as Brandon was saying earlier, there's going to be a lot of giveaways, and we're going to have an after party, which is just a really casual, fun after the conference where we're going to jump on a chat with anybody who wants to and just talk and like get to interact. And so that's going to be fun as well. We'll play a few games, maybe have some prizes. We'll see.
There are some great prizes. I've got to see those too. So if you guys want to join me and Katie at Refresh, go to refreshyourhomeschool.com and get your advanced purchase tickets for only $29. You want to get those before Saturday, February 8th, because they will be more if you wait to the door to get those. We can't wait to learn and grow with you guys all at Refresh. Thank you guys so much for joining us today.
All right. We'll talk to you later. Bye.
Bye.